Hi, Misha here, and today we're going to change gears a bit and look at a helicopter. And we won't have many helicopters to look at because in the diecast world there aren't many. And I asked why and was told by a couple of different sources that they just don't sell well, which I think is really crazy, but hey, market's the market. So what better place, where better to start than with the UH-1 Iroquois, or as it's better known, the Huey. And I actually have two models out, one good one and one not so great, but it's what I have. Here we have a 1/48 scale UH-1D type, known as a slick. So this would be more of a cargo troop transport version. And then we also have this here. This is a 172 scale from Vietnam. This is a Hog, which was the rocket attack version. This would have been a UH-1B or C. Probably a C. And this model is from Amercom. And this model is from Air Force One. And there were two basic body styles of the Huey, but tons of variation. But where does this story begin? Well, in Korea, the helicopter came in to use. I'm really trying not to. It's kind of balancing weird on this. I'm sorry. My best. Anyway, apologies. The helicopter was seeing heavy use in Korea, at least compared to the past. But in the U.S. Army, predominantly, they wanted a new helicopter to use as a medevac, and also just general transport kind of, personnel aircraft. But all the options that were available in that day and time were too big, too bulky, underpowered, and really maintenance intensive. They weren't really perfected yet. I mean, this is still very early days for the chopper, so they put out a tender saying what they want, and in '53, late that year, around November, 3 companies, including Bell, responded with design prints for new helicopters, and the Army evaluated them throughout '54, and in early '55 they awarded the contract to Bell. By 1956, the XH-40, as it was known at the time, prototype, first flew late that year, around October. And in '57, a couple more prototypes took flight. Of course, they ironed out problems. And in '59, the military officially adopted it as the HU-1A, or I should say the Army did, and designated it as the Iroquois. But because of HU-1, it looked like Huey, and that's where the name came from. In 1960, the Army ordered its first 100 1As, and also Bell got to work updating the design. they first came out with the 1B, which had a slightly larger cabin and more powerful engine and many other design tweaks. And that's what this is here. Notice the door just has the one window in it and the cabin is smaller. Afterwards, they started working on the 1C and the 1D. The 1C was actually an upgraded version with even a more powerful engine, made a little bit more maneuverable, a little bit faster, and it was specifically designed to carry weapons, because originally the Huey was to be a general utility helicopter, kind of a one-size-fits-all, like a Jeep. It could carry people, cargo, troops, but it also was designed to carry weapons on the side, door gunners and the like. So they made the 1C as a dedicated attack version. Took them a number of years to get it ready to go. The 1D, as I said, was an even larger version. It actually got up to the point where it could hold the pilot and up to 15 troops, so a full squad. Or if it was in the medical role, it could hold up to 6 stretchers plus a medic. So not bad. It could, take care of up to half a dozen injured GIs, or haul over a dozen into battle to probably get injured. In 1962, if you notice in my aircraft videos, I refer to that year, that's when McNamara, at least under his orders, kind of had a unified naming designating system for all branches, so quite a few airplanes and helicopters changed names. That's when this became the UH-1 for Utility Helicopter 1. Also, the Air Force and Marines both evaluated it. They both liked the 1B version, and so worked with Bell to customize to suit their needs. The Marines came out with the UH-1E, and the Air Force ended up with the UH-1F. So they would work on those. 1962, 63, there'd be tests, and by 64 they would start to be in Air Force and Navy and Marine service. The Navy too would pick up some Hueys and start using them around the same time. Of course, this bird is well known for its use in Vietnam. Rightfully so. The Army deployed Hueys in that theater as early as 1962. They would be used as attack craft as well as transports. The Marines and Air Force would follow soon. And because these were so customizable, you would see them set up all kinds of ways. Like this, without much on the sides and kind of meant to carry troops with the maximum seating. They were known as slicks. Although this version would still have M60 door gunners. A version like this, with rockets for ground attack and with the slightly smaller cabin, was known as a hog. Our Wikipedia says a frog, but I've always heard a hog. There was also a gunship version used by the Army, known as the Cobra, and a gunship version used by the Navy, known as Seawolf. Well, technically the squadrons that used them, but you get the idea. So these had a lot of nicknames, and again were extremely iconic for that war. However, by 66-67, the Vietnamese anti-air systems, missiles, guns, were getting a bit much for the old Huey. So this is when the UH-1 Cobra makes its debut and really takes over the attack role, but the Huey was still very much used on offense. They even tried it with some tow missiles and stuff. Of course, it was still used for troop transport, cargo, and medevac, amongst many other things. Mostly the Air Force used for transport, but they did have some set up for combat use themselves. But the Army was the big combatant there, along with the Marines. So some of its roles would get taken over by the Cobra, which really was a derivative of this helicopter, at least to some extent. But Bell would continue to manufacture the Huey throughout the 70s, well into the 80s, really not ending till nearly the 1990 time period. In that time, between 1959, 1960, and 1988, they would produce over 16,000, which is a very large number for a helicopter. But this thing was a very great general utility, and Bell continued to upgrade and improve it. For example, the UH-1H, and it had a lot of foreign customers as well as the U.S. military. The Army would keep using these extensively through the first Gulf War, and really even into the second, not officially retiring all of its birds until 2005, with the Army, with the National Guard, keeping them around for about another 5 years. The Air Force, on the other hand, only last year, which was 2018, for whenever you might be watching this video, announced the Huey's replacement, but that's still some distance in the future. So this is still very much current Air Force hardware. Of course, today it's used as a transport for their cargo personnel. It's not a combat vehicle really for them. And again, I'm telling you, it's a flying Jeep. You could even take the doors off quickly and fly it wide open. These doors could easily slide back. You notice the larger version here has the two windows, excuse me. There's the front doors for the cabin as well. And there's different kinds of lightweight canvas seat bench arrangements that could be done inside. The inside was very configurable. Again, it was basically just a box with an engine on top and in the back, and they could do what they want with it. It was much easier to maintain and much more powerful than previous helicopters in U.S. service. The Army would start to replace it in the 80s with the UH-60 Blackhawk, but again, it wouldn't be till after the second Gulf War that it would really finally get its just retirements and rest. very big, iconic piece of American Vietnam Cold War history. And not that these were just used to, attack and destroy things, as with the gunship or the rocket version, but also in the medical role, many lives were saved because of Hueys, or at most, many American soldiers' remains were brought home. So it definitely wasn't just a combat chopper. It could and did perform rescue missions as well. The specs on these, of course, the cabin length varies. Generally speaking, this could get up to about 120 miles per hour, 130, 140 in a pinch, but that's kind of max speed. Had a range of about 300 to 320 miles. And it could climb up past 19,000 feet, although it rarely operated that high. And of course, weather conditions played a major role. Like most helicopters, this was meant to be more or less low altitude. Pretty much any role you can think of for a helicopter, this thing did at one point. And for more, there's tons of great documentaries and articles. So let's wrap things up by just talking about these models a little bit. This Amercom one I picked up because these are cheap, and not many people do Hueys. And I like that it was the they call it a heavy hog, but it's the armed up version. It's technically die-cast, but it has a lot of plastic. There's not much metal. And what there is, like with the body, doesn't feel like the metal on, say, a Hobbymaster. It's a very thin, very, honestly, low-grade metal. I mean, it does the job. It does give it some weight, and these are relatively durable. And they do have, like, clear windows. As you see, the propellers do spin. It does have ordnance. So really, for the money, it's okay. You even get a little stand, which actually is perfectly respectable. I just wish they were a little better feeling, a little more model feeling. But for an example piece, a filler piece, and a setup or collection, they're not bad. But whenever I get a chance, I always replace them. I've only bought a couple of Amercoms. They don't really strike me, even though they are priced fair. The Air Force One, on the other hand, is a different story. This is a very robust model. It is, like most Air Force Ones, mostly metal, very chunky. Even the skids are metal, which is great. The tail is metal. Of course, our rotors are plastic, and our antenna are plastic. We do have winders. This is 1/48 scale. I would have preferred 1/72 just to match my other stuff, but I wanted a Huey so bad I just kind of didn't care. In the past, Corgi has made some 1/72 scale Hueys, but they're out of production now, and when you find them, especially in the Vietnam scheme, they are $150, and I'm not paying that, especially for a smaller plane. I would much rather pay the $50-$60 for this one here. Just seems, I mean, you get a bigger aircraft for half the money. So, and I have to admit, for helicopters, 1/48 is a better scale, as you see over here. 1/72, and the Huey is a relatively big helicopter. 1/72, it's still pretty small. Like the Cobra, it's even smaller, and some of the earlier planes, or just, I keep saying planes, I apologize. Helicopters are just tiny. So it is neat. Air Force One definitely has its pros. They do some things very well. For simple, rugged designs like a Huey, they're great. Now, something like their F-35, I would definitely rather go Hobby Master. But, yeah. They even come with a very... Yeah, that keeps doing it. It's like that goes to me on that. Anyway. The stand is metal entirely. And it actually even bolts together. So their stands are really about the best you're gonna find, which is great. So yeah, I would say with Air Force One, just know what you're getting. And the only disappointment for me, kind of wish the doors opened. I know that's a minor thing, but as big as this is, I think they could have hinged the doors, and that would have been neat. Or even make them just removable, like on the original. If they couldn't hinge them, just make them come off. And also, I would have liked a crew. It's kind of funny because their 172 scales usually have a crew, so I'm not sure why the 148 is empty. Now, as Jay said, there are no pilots, but if you look way far in the back, if you can, you will see one very scared 17-year-old private hiding behind one of the seats who's fighting in a war he just doesn't understand. I mean, when I was a kid, Vietnam was our most recent conflict, and so Vietnam veterans and things were very prevalent, so we got really exposure to them, and it has a lot of personal connotations. So, anyway, choppers, I hope you enjoyed it. I do have a couple others to show you. Like I said, not many, because there just aren't a lot in the diecast at all, regardless of the scale. But we'll have a couple others. So yeah, in conclusion, I would say if you can, get the Air Force One. It really is a solid, chunky thing. Don't worry, that was just the skid hooking on the little Velcro there. And they're not priced bad. And if you can't, the Amercom is okay. I definitely wouldn't pay more than 20 bucks for one, maybe more like 15. For that, they're alright, but don't expect a whole lot and you won't be disappointed. Again, it's just they're so light. But yeah, thought we would change it up a bit today. If you came here from the main Mishaco channel, I appreciate you stopping in. And if you haven't, go over there and check out a video we did showing this Huey and talking about the sidearms of its pilots. Kind of a crossover video we did. So yeah, any questions or comments, please do post them below. As always, I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you very soon next time.